I think that he was definitely a pioneer. A pioneer not so much of horror genre, which was being done many, many years before, but he was probably, along with Fernando Mendes and a couple of directors in the 70s, Carlos Enrique Taboada particularly, one of the few directors that exerted storytelling on the genre with culture and with knowledge of it. I mean, Moctezuma was an avid reader, an avid cinephile, knowledgeable of the Gothic traditions, knowledgeable of all the literary traditions of horror, very aware fan of the rest of the world production in the genre. And he was not a B-movie filmmaker in that sense. He was not a guy turning a quick buck just for the sake of product. He was a guy that was very interested in experimenting and very interested in. I remember to this day as a child, my favorite program was a program that he used to introduce at night, and it was mostly silent film and mostly fantastic silent film. I saw The Golem, Nosferatu, Vampire. All those movies he introduced that night for me, and he was the host. And so he was a very important formative figure in my personal life, you know.
Alucarda seems to me to be a film unique in world sort of cinema history, really.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on that film?
Well, I think that definitely he's one of the filmmakers from the 70s that were dealing with sort of kind of a French take on horror, very experimental. That I find very. I mean, his films are very much children of their time. They are very much like almost a time capsule of the 70s, you know. But they all that can be said also of some of the more pop efforts of Mario Bava, like Diabolique, you know, Danger Diabolique. And it's not a negative or pejorative comment. It's just they were very important in just making me realize that horror could be done in Mexico, you know, in a different way than just masked wrestler movies with tongue in the cheek, you know. I think there's a difference between a revisionist filmmaker and a classical filmmaker, and I think that López Moctezuma was the odd mixture of both. He was very interested in the roots, but very modern in his approach. So in that he was unique.
What was the impression of those films in Mexico at the time? I mean, they must have been pretty outrageous. I mean,
they were not received well. They were not received well. They are to this day considered cult films. There's a very small group of people that appreciate them. Most people and the general body of critics dislike them, dismiss them, and I think that it all adds up to make his reputation as a poeta maldito, no? It's much better for him to be the kind of the Baudelaire of the 1970s horror cinema in Mexico. You know, I think it's a condition that he appreciates or he would like, you know.
One of the figures that's important in La Mansa de la Cura Alucarda is Claudio Brook.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you what your memories of him, what your impressions of him were, and what his place was in Mexican cinema.
Claudio was extremely interesting a figure because in many ways, like Vincent Price or like Christopher Lee or Boris Karloff, he was an extremely straight guy. He was like very, very straight guy, very no nonsense, very good raconteur, but he was associated with many wild projects. And he was kind of the cult actor by excellence. You know, he was Buñuel's actor. He was in the López Moctezuma project, and I find him fascinating as such. And that I cannot deny that it was mainly that fascination with him as a cult figure that led me to hire him in Kronos. I thought definitely Buñuel being one of my favorite filmmakers of all times. And my memory of him was of a great raconteur, a very, very, very professional guy, almost mechanically perfect. He would fall in the mark. He had such craftsmanship as an actor, very academically trained. He was the Mexican equivalent to an English actor. You know, I work with American actors that come from the method, and I work with English classically trained actors, and I adore the English school because it's just no nonsense precision. And Claudio was one of those. You know, you could count on him keeping his own matching. He would always be in tune with the emotion, but he wouldn't have to carry it over. He was a great guy.
One of the things that struck me about him is he was in this amazing range of products. He'd be in Santo movies,
Yes.
you know, he'd be in Buñuel movies and stuff. But he seemed to give. He's a bit like Peter Cushing. Always gave
Yes.
his best performance.
I tell you, he reminds me a lot of the Hammer guys. He reminded me a lot of the Hammer guys because he was just a pro. He was never tongue in cheek. He was never tongue in cheek. He was never winking at the camera. He was never shoddy at his job. God knows that when a 27-year-old kid from the provinces approached him to play a dying industrialist in a Mexican vampire movie, he took it damn seriously. And I remember one of the things I liked about Claudio is that he did fall in love with his characters. You know, he had a very sweet gesture with me when we finished Kronos. He said, "Can I keep the cane of the character?" Because he felt it was very beautiful, and he said, I'd like to keep a memory from the character. And later, about 2 years later, I saw him, and he was very sick, and he was using that cane for walking. And I said, "You're using that cane?" And he said, "Yeah, how do you like that?"